My name is Lucy Vitole and I am from the Mail and Guardian. And today we are here at the Santon Convention Center for the 23rd Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture. And of course, Francesca Albanese will be delivering the keynote. But before that, we're going to be talking to some doctors from Doctors Against the Genocide in Palestine. So, yes. Hello, how are you today?
Very well, thank you.
I'm good. We would like to know what brings you here today?
Yeah, so I'm a physician from the US, and I am here as a part of a delegation of physicians called Doctors Against Genocide. We were here presenting the medical perspective on anti-genocide work, which has been lacking the medical voice and scholarship. And we believe that genocide is a public health catastrophe, and we need to be a part of this scholarship and as a part of the discussion moving forward.
And what do you think Nelson Mandela's legacy will teach people? For that, what do you think it should teach people out there, especially in the medical field as well?
Yeah, to be unrelentingly demanding for truth and for accountability. As someone whose family has actually been killed in Gaza, I really appreciate his legacy and his demand, not just for truth, but to demand accountability moving forward.
And what do you hope to gain from annual lecture from Francesca?
Yeah, I'm always happy to hear her thoughts, and she has been unrelenting in truth telling and in her centering of the Palestinian voice, and her demand to rehumanize Palestinians who have so been dehumanized through all of this, and an insistence on recognizing our common humanity and how everything in our world is connected, and that we have to free Palestine in order to free the rest of us from what is happening in our world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today.
Thank you.
And so next up, we have Hello. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. What brings you here today for this annual lecture that is so important?
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Yipeng Ji. I'm a family doctor based in Canada. I've joined Doctors Against Genocide for a conference this week in Johannesburg about genocide studies. And since we're here, we thought it would be really important to also join this conversation with Francesca Albanese, as she's been such a champion for Palestinian human rights and relating the ongoing atrocities in not but the West Bank, in Jerusalem, and historic Palestine, amounting to genocide, apartheid, and illegal occupation. As healthcare workers, as doctors from all around the world, but myself, I've also worked in Gaza as a last year. We condemn genocide. We stand opposed to genocide, and we continue to organize with other like-minded folks, including the Palestine Solidarity organizations and activists and organizers based here in Johannesburg. We've had the privilege of meeting them as well over this past week and joined their protests outside of you that the Holocaust and genocide, because they have refused and acknowledge at the bare minimum the genocide in Gaza. And so we are here to support rights defender for but saying that she is not the story. The repression that she has faced with the sanctions from the United States is not the story. The story is the genocide that is still going on in Gaza, in Palestine. Our own healthcare worker colleagues, our own doctor colleagues, who are wearing a white coat and scrubs as they take care of their patients and community in Gaza, continue to be attacked. Hospitals continue to be attacked. And so we are here doing the bare minimum of healthcare providers as doctors who stand up and recognize that genocide is the most pressing health issue of our time. And never again has to mean never again for everyone.
And what would you like to see from the public? What else would more can the public do to kind of like help you guys and join you guys in this fight against genocide?
Is it working?
The calls to the public
Is it
have
working?
been really consistent from Palestinian civil
Okay.
society, which is joined
Okay.
Palestinians divestment.
Checking. Good.
We are not the ones under direct bombardment and attack. We have so much work to do to end genocide, to end Zionist settler colonialism in Palestine at the hands of Israel. And to do that, we have so many tactics at our disposal, using the lessons from South African apartheid and the struggle for liberation on this land, and recognizing there's still so much work to be done here for true equity. But learning from those tactics of nonviolent resistance, civil pressuring our governments and complicity and active involvement in sending the weapon and the bombs to Israel to commit genocide. But our own hospital institutions, our own medical institutions are complicit because they refuse to speak up and they actually refuse to divest. And so these are the most basic things that anyone in the public can do. Everyone in this world has some sort of connection to their workplace, to pension plans, to an educational institution. And the more that we organize, the more that we work together to put the people power and pressure necessary to end those forms of complicity with Israel, the closer to a liberated Palestine by Palestinians for Palestinians. But ultimately, we must center the Palestinian people and their rightful struggle, including armed struggle for resistance against their colonial occupying force, Israel. That is the most basic and decent thing for us to do in this moment, to be fully opposed to genocide and to be in unwavering solidarity with Palestinians and their right to return, their right to life, their right to dignity, their right to exist on their own lands as they continue to face extermination and annihilation of Israel, as they continue to break the ceasefire over and over again, because this has always been a colonial endeavor since 1948, since the ongoing Nakba began with the creation of the state of Israel on the land that is known to be Palestine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll be back for more later on, but stay tuned, and we're going to be going live at 3 o'clock with the actual lecture, so please stay tuned. Hello, sir, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. You'll just say your name and then I'll just ask you a question. What brings you here today? Hello, how are you?
Oh, well, thank you very much. The better for being here. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you say your name so that our audience
Pumluana, and to enjoy the honor of Francesca Albanese's speech.
And why do you think such an annual lecture is so important, especially in the times that we're living in right now?
The annual lecture is a way of sustaining the legacy of Nelson Mandela. It's a legacy that is almost anchored in the very speech he made in the court where he was charged, where he could have faced the death sentence. And he was expressing an ideal of people living peaceably. And he said, this is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. And it does tell us that there is a cost that we need to take into account for justice and for what is good in society, and positive values that make for a better society for us all. And so the annual lecture does that from year to year. But this one is particularly special because it hones in on a problem in the Holy Land that the whole world needs to worry about. There is no question in anybody's mind that Israel as a state has a right to exist, and it must be supported in that regard. But also, there should be no question that Palestine has a right to exist with its own sovereignty that must be guaranteed. And it is possible for there to be peace and justice for all and human dignity for all. And I think maybe, just maybe, more of these kinds of conversations will persuade more people to understand that we have to find a way, in the spirit of Mandela, to come together and do the right thing with one another.
And yeah, so Francesca had mentioned yesterday that she was actually sanctioned by the US and she expected the UN to at least protect her. Like, what would you say to the UN in terms of, I mean, she's part of the UN, but she's being treated
Well,
fairly.
you must remember that Nelson Mandela was considered a terrorist by the US government even when he was president of the Republic of South Africa. So that should be no surprise. But then, of course, the question is whether the United Nations able nations that has not been able to make sure that there is peace in the Holy Land for everyone. So we should not be surprised. But I would hope that there would be enough reason, enough people need to understand that it's not one or the other. It is about all. Remember that the Holy Land, as Pope Francis said, is the common patrimony of the three Islamic faiths, and all of them to have a place to worship the land. They all have holy nights there. And this is something that cannot be denied by anyone. So I think that's really what it's about.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's about to start in 10 minutes, so you can just say we're going to click over to the actual lecture. We'll see you again at the end.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Hello, my name is Busy Litole. I'm back again. So the actual lecture is about to in, and we'll be back again on the red carpet to speak to more people. Thank you. Okay. I'm gonna. Oh.
Making trouble, making space, making justice a reality.
We have traveled a long journey. We have fought for peace and reconciliation, justice for all men, women, and children. To live together in harmony and with equal opportunity. These are ideals I still believe in. But the time has come to fully hand over my work.
Keep believing. Keep marching. Keep building. Keep raising your voice. Every generation has the opportunity to remake the world.
To anyone who says they care about protecting girls and women, to anyone who says they care about education, to anyone who says they care about oppression, what are you waiting for?
I hope and pray that we will take the example of Madiba and the people of South Africa in understanding what is required to win mighty battles that are necessary for good harmony with the planet and with people.
Let us remind ourselves that our work is far from complete. We're human beings. There is more work to be done. After nearly 90 years of life, it is time for new heads to lift the burdens. It is in your hands now.
I would like to thank Nelson Mandela Foundation and Early Care Foundation for this opportunity they forwarded to us. I know we're going to
the money from funding.
Conversations led us here.
The Women's African Cup of Nations.
An amazing performance.
Miss Universe.
The Oscar goes to
Mark Shuttleworth will spend 10 days in space.
the African Nations Cup.
Mr. Nelson Mandela, a free man taking his first steps into a new South Africa.
It's amazing how far we can go when we start with the right conversations. SAFM, leading conversations that move us.
Today we inaugurate the first annual Nelson Mandela Lecture. The lecture is part of a series of events being held this week to celebrate Nelson Mandela.
It is because I am the product of the people of the world who have cherished the vision of a better life for all people everywhere. They insisted in a spirit of self-sacrifice that vision should be realized in South Africa too. They gave us hope because we knew by their solidarity that our ideas could not be silenced since they were the ideas of humanity. I am the product of Africa and her long cherished dream of a rebirth that can now be realized so that all of her children may play in the sun.
It's 2030, and at Vodacom, we envision a future where every connection empowers, from individuals to whole communities, transforming lives across Africa. We are more than a telecommunications provider. We are a purpose-driven force, ensuring digital access is a right for all, not just a privilege for a few. Our commitment to empowerment is clear. By the end of 2030, we aim for 4G coverage for all our customers and 80% smartphone penetration. With the right technology in the hands of Africans, financial inclusion is our greatest drive. Our goal is to grow our fintech customers to 120 million, making essential financial services accessible to 75% of our mobile users. Entrepreneurs in South Africa, farmers in Tanzania, and students in the DRC are thriving with the digital tools they need to grow, learn, and innovate. We have digitalized enterprises and government services, providing digital tools that allow sectors such as healthcare, education, and agriculture to thrive. Together, we are solving societal challenges. We have now reached over 26 million people with our health information systems. Through TechStart, our digital skills initiative, we've equipped 1 million young Africans with vital digital skills for the jobs of the future. And our agriculture solutions like eVuna solve complex supply chain issues faced by farmers, buyers, and other stakeholders, creating a seamless flow from farms to tables. All of this is underpinned by a meaningfully differentiated brand built on inclusivity, sustainability, and African ingenuity. Our brand is amplified through our channels, which have become intuitive human-centric hubs. Guided by purpose, we ask the right questions, like how can technology better the world? From Cape Town to Cairo, we've ignited opportunities and fostered innovation, celebrating Africa's unique vibrancy. We invite everyone, employees, partners, and customers to co-create the future with us. We are Vodacom, and we believe that by connecting people with purpose, we can go further together.
Technology has sped up time and made our lives increasingly complex, created a world where it can sometimes feel hard to catch your breath and find the space to truly connect with those you care about. With so much to worry about, it can be difficult to find light. So you need to surround yourself with those things that bring you pause, make you smile, feel loved, so that these moments become lifelong memories. Vision Tactical does more than merely safeguard your home and business. We safeguard you and your lifestyle. Your security is more than just knowing you have backup when tragedy strikes. It's about creating a community that welcomes you home with a smile, making your day just that little bit brighter, and giving you the time to take in the beauty of the world. In today's connected world, it often feels like we are all becoming disconnected. Vision Tactical believes in a better life and a new way of living, where your lifestyle becomes a priority. It's safety in numbers, and this is what Vision Tactical does best.
It is, however, a reflection of the times we find ourselves in, and we must have the courage to listen and to move through that pain and discomfort. As an independent expert as my predecessor, I've always strived to fulfill the role of an impartial and informed witness. The perception of impartiality has been a consistently contentious aspect of this mandate since its inception, drawing regular accusations of bias. But impartiality has become a pompous word for indifference.
Against the backdrop of a new dawn, a nation stood united, casting shadows of resilience upon the canvas of destiny. Ekuqaleni kwenkululeko nolawulo lwentando lwesininzi, ndaphefumla okokuqala umama wandiphehlelela ngegama elinguzozibini Thunzi.
We will not be stopped now. You hold the future in your hand.
Bound by a dream of freedom, we embarked on a journey of hope and reconciliation. Together, we celebrated triumphs that echoed across the globe. Where colors dance and stories run, South African artists weave their tales. Our voices rise forevermore. Innovation blooms in South Africa's journey. From technology's forefront to automotive mastery, pioneering breakthroughs and nurturing minds. Our legacy. Driven by the spirit of possibility, we have built a nation where dreams take flight and bridges crumble barriers. In the face of injustice, we stand tall, unyielding voices echoing the call for humanity and equal rights. For 30 years, our flag has been a symbol of unity, resilience, and hope. Celebrating 30 years of democracy. This is South Africa. We are still moving forward. South Africa, inspiring new ways.
They don't kick down doors for the sake of noise. They knock twice, then walk in anyway, because justice rarely comes by invitation. They were born into systems that promised peace but delivered silence, but feared dissent, that honored rights only in ink, never in action. But still they speak, not because it's easy, because it's necessary. They're the ones who remember that Madiba was 26 when he stopped asking for permission, when he traded comfort for consequence, when he chose movement over memory. They know legacy is not a statue, it's a verb. It's the risk you take to tell the story straight. These troublemakers, they hold the pen now. Their trouble deliberate, their power not loud but rooted. They remix archives, they challenge, question, rebuild, not out of rage, out of love. Because they believe in a world where peace does not mean forgetting, where human rights are not headlines, and where democracy is more than a vote, it's a voice that cannot be muted. So here's to the good troublemakers. From Soweto to Sao Paulo, Khayelitsha to Kigali, Braamfontein to Brooklyn. The ones in living rooms, in classrooms, in hashtags, making trouble, making space, making justice a reality.
We have traveled a long journey. We have fought for peace and reconciliation, for social justice, for all men, women, and children. To live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. These are ideals I still believe in. But the time has come to fully hand over my work.
Keep believing. Keep marching. Keep building. Keep raising your voice. Every generation has the opportunity to remake the world.
To anyone who says they care about protecting girls and women, to anyone who says they care about education, to anyone who says they care about oppression, what are you waiting for?
I hope and pray that we will take the example of Madiba and the people of South Africa in understanding what is
Our work is far from complete. Where there is poverty and sickness, where human beings are being oppressed, there is more work to be done. After nearly 90 years of life, it is time for new heads to lift the burdens. It in your hands now.
My name is Ridi Tlhabi. I'm a broadcast journalist, a South African journalist and moderator living and working in Washington, D.C., and that's all I'm going to say about that. My name is Ridi Tlhabi. I'm a broadcast journalist, a South African journalist and moderator living and working in Washington, D.C., and that's all I'm going to say about that. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the 23rd Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture. We gather under the light and the spirit of Nelson Mandela, who taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but triumph over it, who taught us that peace is not the absence or the silence of guns, but the presence of justice. I think I'm not the only person who is rattled by what is happening in the globe today, a transactional foreign policy posturing by the most powerful nation in the world, the guns and bombs that are going off in Gaza, in the Sudan. We are gathering at a time when our world is shaken by war, by division, and moral uncertainty. But I think that it is important to go back to where we started, to go back to values that many perhaps think are too soft, too inconvenient. They don't matter in this world of realism and realpolitik, where it is the survival of the fittest. We know that he lived for truth, dignity, compassion, and dialogue, and that these today are not mere relics of history. They are the campus that we need to navigate this uncertain world. So it is in that spirit that I welcome you to the lecture this afternoon. It wouldn't be the Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture without music, without song. We wouldn't be on South African soil without music and song. Please help me give a warm welcome to the Wits University Choir.
See Thank you to the Wits University Choir. We'll give you a moment. Thank you. Another warm round of applause. Thanks. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you and welcome the NMF, Nelson Mandela Foundation Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Mbongiseni Buthelezi.
Say goodbye to Slack because chat's here and it's inside ClickUp. Everything you need in chat is here, like your DMs and even your channels. But there's
Albanese, members of the Mandela family here present with us, ministers and deputy ministers of the South African government, premiers, members of provincial executive committees, university vice-chancellors here present, United Nations resident coordinator, Mr. Nelson Mufu, and colleagues from the United Nations, ambassadors and all members of the diplomatic corps, trustees of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, friends and supporters of the foundation, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, I thank you for attending the 23rd Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture. All 3,500 of you in this room, and of course, the many thousands watching via live stream on television and on radio. Many individual expressions of thanks for making today possible are due. And I'll be acknowledging all of them during my closing remarks at the end of today's event. But allow me to start by thanking three people at the outset, and people and organizations. Of course, the United Nations Special Rapporteur for accepting the invitation to come to South Africa and think very hard with us about the moment we are in the world, and to dream big, big about liberatory possibilities. Allow me to thank the United Nations team here in South Africa, which has been an ever-willing partner in bringing the UN Special Rapporteur to South Africa for this lecture. And finally, for now, we are grateful to the Sandton Convention Center for making this facility available to us at a very late notice. I must just tell you that we were overwhelmed by demand. When we made tickets available, we were going to have this event at Wits University, our partner in this event, and within 37 minutes, all 1,000 tickets had been accounted for. And so we simply had to find a bigger venue. I agree with me that this year's lecture finds the world in a moment that is difficult to make sense of and painful to live through. We know that major geopolitical shifts are underway. We know that climate change is impacting in dramatic ways on societies across the world, and especially in the global south. We see new forms of wealth extraction, new manifestations of racism and white supremacy. And we see a proliferation of wars and other forms of conflict. We see genocide turned into a spectacle and political football. Some commentators describe the world as being in a state of polycrisis. And at a time when we need them most, international law and the world's institutions of multilateralism are under siege by those who have vested interest in them failing. It is in this context that the board of the Nelson Mandela Foundation took a decision to adopt the theme of this year's lecture, Enhancing Peace and Global Cooperation. In 2003, on a visit to Malawi, Madiba reminded us that, I quote, international and multilateral bodies have the ability, if there is political will, to solve and prevent conflicts. He also asserted that business leaders share responsibility for building a more peaceful and prosperous world. We at the Nelson Mandela Foundation believe in international law. We support multilateralism as a critical instrument for resolving conflict and promoting justice. We demand a private sector that invests in the imperative to make just societies. Madiba created the Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture in 2003 as a platform for thought leadership and an instrument for provoking public discussion and debate. This week, this platform has delivered thought-provoking debate, an opportunity to ask one another very hard questions and look in the mirror. With organizations including the Jewish Democratic Initiative, South African Jews for a Free Palestine, the South African Council of Churches, the Evangelical Alliance of South Africa, and activist organizations and formations from across the country, we sat across tables from one another. We sat across the table at which Madiba himself hosted many difficult but necessary dialogues and asked one another hard questions. Questions about what a just peace in the Middle East needs to be and how it can be achieved. Questions about what did it look like to eat, which we all do, and to feed our children products that do not support dispossession in Palestine or anywhere else in the world. We were also asked hard questions too as organizations, especially those carrying the legacy of Madiba, about our role in fighting injustice in the world today and who we take money from. Predictably, there has also been a torrent of misinformation, of lies, and of vile abuse of both the foundation, but also of individuals, including our annual lecture speaker today, as well as our chair, Dr. Naledi Pandor, the chair of the Nelson Mandela Foundation Board. Allow me to take a moment to thank the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, who along with the Andrew and June Mlangeni Foundation and the Sophie and Henry de Bruyn Foundation have stood up to those who are trying to bully us into silence. We also thank the many people who continue to raise their voices online, on talk radio and everywhere else, against those who are trying to silence us and thus turn us complicity in genocide. More than ever, we need platforms like this annual lecture as we strive to make sense of the world and identify strategies for effecting meaningful and sustainable change. This august platform has attracted global thought leaders and change agents over the last 2 decades. I'm proud to say to date, 7 Nobel Prize winners, 7 sitting heads or former heads of state, and 3 senior United Nations leaders have graced this platform. Ms. Albanese will be, of course, the fourth senior UN leader to do so today. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no doubt that you will agree with me that for this year's lecture, we have a speaker who is both a thought leader and a social change agent, and someone whose life and work is inspirational. I cannot wait to listen to Ms. Albanese's lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Buthelezi. And I think that we really ought to reflect on the ramifications that come with standing up for the values that you have articulated here. And if I may just emphasize that the Nelson Mandela Foundation is under enormous, enormous pressure. It was a gutsy move to invite the speaker that you've invited today. And there are consequences to these actions, as we saw through Madiba's life, and we'll talk more about these consequences in our fireside chat after the lecture. But I was thinking of a word as you were speaking, indifference, that indifference is the enemy at this very fractured time. Allow me to introduce you to Nelson Mufa, who is the UN Resident Coordinator, and he will share perspectives on the theme of the lecture this year. Please come forward. Oh, so you got my SMS about the outfit, right? The color scheme. They didn't adhere to it here. Just a few people, but you and I, we're good, right?
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to the program director, very coordinated, that is. To the chair of the board of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, as well as to the chief executive, thank you for having us here this evening. And also to the excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. It is truly a profound honor to join you today at the 23rd Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture in celebration of the legacy of an icon whose wisdom, vision of justice, dignity, and human solidarity continues to inspire our world. This year's theme, Enhancing Peace and Global Cooperation, could not be more timely or relevant. As the world marks the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, we are called together to renew the very principles that gave birth to the UN in 1945. Faith in dialogue, respect for human life and dignity, and the conviction that our shared humanity is stronger than the forces that divide us. In his recent address to the General Assembly, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged world leaders to choose cooperation over fragmentation and reclaim the ethical foundations of multilateralism, reminding us that peace requires dignity, justice, and inclusion for all. He also called on the international community to put people before geopolitics and to see in each crisis not an excuse for despair, but a call to rebuild trust and advance solidarity. And the need for such renewal is evident in every corner of the world, from the devastation in Gaza and Sudan to the climate emergency, rising inequality, and the growing divides within and between societies. It is why we must redouble our efforts for peace, grounded in international law and compassion for every human being. We are therefore looking very much forward to this year's lecture, delivered by Ms. Francesca Albanese, the independent United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories. Her presence here today is both timely and deeply symbolic as we reflect on the enduring humane legacy of Nelson Mandela and the humane values that continue to guide the United Nations. Special rapporteurs, as independent experts, play an indispensable role in amplifying truth, accountability, and the lived realities of those most affected by injustice. Their work exemplifies the spirit of principled, independent thought that late President Mandela so powerfully embodied, a commitment to speak truth even when it is uncomfortable, and to do so in the service of peace and humanity. As the United Nations family, we have long cherished our deep and growing collaboration with the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Together, we have celebrated Madiba's legacy not only through dialogue, but through action, including the publication of 2 Mandela books on the Sustainable Development Goals, which serve as a powerful call to action for individuals, governments, civil society, and business. And we are honored that former Secretary General Kofi Annan, current Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and current Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed have previously delivered this lecture, underscoring the United Nations' deep respect for this platform and its convening power. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the journey towards peace and cooperation is not an abstract one. It is shaped by what each of us chooses to do. The path forward demands bold, intentional, and unified action, and we need to ensure that we are at the center of leading this effort. South Africa and the continent of Africa needs to play their role as co-creators of the future we wish to see and deserve to live. And in the spirit of Mandela, let us recommit ourselves to humanity in action. We must invest in peace, uphold the rights of the vulnerable, mobilize collaboration across borders, and ensure that our global system is equitable and serves everyone, not just a few. Let us remember, peace is not inevitable, it is essential. It is a choice we make every day. And justice is not passive, it is pursued. So let this lecture and this gathering be a clarion call for shared responsibility, courageous leadership, and unwavering dedication to building a world worthy of Mandela's hope and our collective future. A future we must walk together with courage, compassion, and conviction. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mufa. And as you said, that peace is a choice, so we can presume that the opposite of peace is also a choice. It's actually quite exasperating when you look at the theme of the 23rd lecture, enhancing peace and global cooperation, that there's anyone in the world who would be intimidated and unhappy about those kind of themes. It's actually quite ridiculous, to be honest. But in sending off the United Nations, I think I do want to say that UNRWA, the United Nations agency that works in Palestine, the United Nations has seen the highest casualties in this crisis, in this genocide in Gaza, but they continue to be on the ground. And I also think it's important to mention that just the ICJ affirmed the legitimacy of UNRWA as a credible as the only credible authoritative agency for humanitarian aid in Palestine. And they also ruled that there's no evidence that has been brought by Israel that UNRWA has been infiltrated by Hamas. Go argue with the wall. It's the ICJ that said so. I'm just repeating it to you. It is a pleasure right now to introduce you to the chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, a leader whom we still call minister, but she's not a minister anymore, Dr. Naledi Pandor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. Well, I'm going to do that awful thing of saying I attach myself or something like that, some poor English like that, to the protocol that was indicated by the Chief Executive Officer of the foundation. Awful. So let me, just to ameliorate a little bit, say, excellent distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Well, good afternoon to you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would not be true to myself if I did not begin by saying I wish to express my sincere thanks to all those who stepped in when it seemed that we could not afford to host the lecture, because those who normally support us became fearful of being in support of justice and freedom. So those who stepped in, I thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and all who are following today's event, wherever you are in the world, receive my greetings from the Nelson Mandela Foundation's Board of Trustees, and I thank all our trustees for being here today. We thank all of you for supporting the 23rd Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture. Chief Mandela, I know I'm not pronouncing it quite the way you want me to, but I hope you'll forgive me. It is my singular honor and pleasure to introduce our speaker this year. Ms. Francesca Albanese hardly needs introduction, of course, given the many ways in which she has inspired people around the world with her courage and tenacity in advocating for the freedom of the Palestinian people over many, many years. She's a human rights lawyer and a legal scholar who has specialized in the histories and contemporary realities of the Middle East. She has taught at universities in Europe, the Middle East, and the United States, and is widely published. Her 2020 book, Palestinian Refugees in International Law, is a magisterial work. Ms. Albanese has a long association with the United Nations going back to 2003. She worked in the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and in the Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. In 2022, she was appointed the UN Special Rapporteur on Palestine. Special rapporteurs have the mandate of monitoring, promoting, and raising awareness on a particular human rights matter all around the world, as well as facilitating a global discussion on their focus area, which is what we're doing today, and ultimately seeking out action to address that human rights issue. The role is a demanding duty for one individual, and even if there were a group of experts, it still would be difficult. Special rapporteurs are not UN employees and are not remunerated by the United Nations. They are experts in their field, independent of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights or any other mechanism or government entity. The Office of the High Commission for Human Rights provides administrative and logistical support. So you will see from this that it is a difficult and often thankless task. Our Board of Trustees believed her to be uniquely positioned to speak to the theme of this year's lecture, enhancing peace and global cooperation. Now, while of course many of us are interested and focused is the troubling situation of the lack of self-determination for the people of Palestine, but our added concern is peace and global cooperation for the entire humanity, and we must never forget that. Over many years, I have followed Ms. Albanese's career with great admiration. We had occasion at one time to speak on the telephone, and I'm sure she regretted allowing me to have her number, because it allowed me to twist her arm and persuade her to come to our country. She executes her task with commitment and a conscience. I have admired her interpretation of her role as including full civil society engagement, accuracy of data, and the courage to stand even when powerful forces seek to derail the honesty of her contribution. You might have seen public commentary saying Lady Pandor is weaponizing the Mandela Foundation. Well, as far as I'm concerned, Nelson Mandela was an incredible weapon. I'm sure that this afternoon, I speak for all of us when I say that we are looking forward to Francesca Albanese's lecture with a great sense of anticipation. I hope that we will listen carefully, draw lessons, draw inspiration. So without any further delay, allow me to most enthusiastically invite her to present the 23rd Annual Nelson Mandela Lecture. I warmly welcome you, Francesca, to this platform.
Molweni. Sanbona. Dumelang. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, comrades, and friends. I'm deeply honored and humbled to stand here on the soil that gave Nelson Mandela and one of the greatest examples of liberation and of modern history. I want to thank the Nelson Mandela Foundation for keeping alive not only the memory of a man, but the movement that embodied the struggle for justice and human dignity, whose legacy we celebrate today. I am deeply honored by your invitation to South Africa to deliver this lecture, reflecting on how Mandela's belief in the indivisibility of freedom and his courage to confront power can guide us through the cruelest injustice of our time. After meeting so many of you in the struggle for justice for Palestine over the years, some of whom are in this room this afternoon, and after spending a few yet profoundly intense and inspiring days among you, I feel it deeply. Mandela could not have been born anywhere else. He was fully, truly, beautifully South African. And there is so much of him in so many of you that it cannot be just a coincidence. To invoke Mandela's name is not to canonize him, but to awaken his unfinished struggle within each of us. His legacy invites us to embrace memory not as nostalgia, but as awareness and resistance. His life, not a statue of memory, but a living compass pointing us toward justice. And his lessons endure. The struggle for freedom is never the burden of one person alone, let alone a people alone. When Nelson Mandela walked out of prison, he did more than free himself. He and his comrades rewrote the grammar of power, turning domination into dignity. Mark His life, as well as his words, teach that justice knows no borders, and our freedom is bound to the freedoms of those still denied theirs. That conviction remains our moral compass today, carried by South Africa, by others in the global South. We should call it global majority. And by the young voices rising from America to Europe and other parts of the global North, let's call it the global minority, demanding a freer world. So let's start. In this moment, as the world witnesses the ongoing attempt to erase an entire people in Palestine, from the fleeting ceasefire in shattered Gaza to the accelerated colonization of the West Bank, history is pressing upon us. And standing on this sacred soil, at the roots of Mother Africa, a continent so rich, so nurturing, despite centuries of violence inflicted upon it, it feels deeply symbolic. South Africa and Palestine share deep historic ties, forged in the fires of resistance to colonial rule and the quest for liberation. The indomitable spirit of the South African people who overcame centuries of European colonialism, dismantling the criminal system of apartheid, continues to resonate far beyond these shores, inspiring all to believe in the possibility of justice. This reminds us that the Palestinian people too, with the solidarity of those who stand beside them, can one day break the chains of oppression. And in this time of utter diplomatic hypocrisy, political cowardice and self-interest, the words of Nelson Mandela resonate louder than ever. In 1997, he said, "Having achieved our own freedom, we can fall into the trap of washing our hands of difficulties that others face. We would be less than human if we did so." And this moment calls on all of us not to wash our hands of the hell into which Israel has plunged Palestine. 2 years after the beginning of the genocide, and despite the ceasefire, the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory remains nothing short of apocalyptic. And I use this term deliberately. Gaza is a wasteland of rubble, refuse, and human remains where survivors cling to life and disease, deprivation, and the relentless weight of violence unseen anywhere this century. Over 240,000 killed or injured, surely many more, say the expert, and the numbers rise daily. Entire neighborhoods obliterated, families returning to ruins only to uncover bodies of their loved ones beneath the rubble, city blocks lying in dust. Clean water is scarce, food nearly non-existent, medicine and electricity critically short. Prisoners tortured and raped, bodies mangled, desecrated, and left in the street. Homes and memories destroyed, intimate lives violated, populations forcibly displaced times and times again across a territory rendered uninhabitable, with nowhere to flee and nothing to return to. Excruciating suffering is widespread, systematic, and by design. And even during the fragile ceasefire, it continues. Over 100 Palestinians have been killed since Israel committed to ceasefire on October 10. For 2 years, Israel has waged a war on a civilian population while Palestinians have no army, no tanks, and no security forces that can protect them. And while in Gaza, it had the excuse of wanting to eradicate Hamas, this does not explain the escalation of violence and acceleration of ethnic cleansing in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. There, over the past 2 years, Palestinians have experienced the largest wave of ethnic cleansing since 1967. More than 40,000 have been driven from their homes, made homeless in the little that remain of their homeland. Over 1,000 killed, 200 children, 10,000 injured, 10,000 detained, many as young as 14, simply to have joined peaceful demonstrations or having been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Armed settlers protected by soldiers roaming with impunity, burning homes, destroying olive trees, attacking families who have farmed for generations. During the olive harvest, once a season of sustenance and joy, farmers now face assault and arson. Their trees uprooted, their soil. What was once life has become resistance. The century-long slow colonization of Palestine has accelerated into a vicious campaign of destruction where the erasure of the indigenous people is the end goal. Euphemism like conflict or clashes conceal the stark reality of horror that continues unchecked. Instead, this is a textbook case of genocide. Genocide, the intentional destruction of a group as such, is rarely a single act. It unfolds piece by piece, decade by decade, crime after crime. And the ongoing genocide in Palestine, visible in the totality of Israeli crimes, against the totality of Palestinians across the totality of the lands slated for annexation, has been meticulously prepared over decades and enabled by long-standing violations, impunity, and international complicity. Genocide, it seems, is the dormant gene of an apartheid regime rooted in settler colonialism. But apocalypse, deriving from the Greek apokalypsis, originally means to reveal, to uncover. And the current moment is fundamentally one of profound revelation, of truth, of reality beyond ordinary perception. The sacrifice of Gaza happening under our watch forces us to confront the system we live in, the horrid, brutal reality we are all part of, the truth of who we are as individuals, as communities, as states, as institutions, and compels us to choose between courage through principles or cowardice through acceptance. And these are some of the lessons of this revelation. First, the genocide in Palestine has pierced the veil of Maya, showing the underlying geopolitical calculation of the world's most powerful nations. As I came to realize, studying the maps of Greater Israel, stretching from the Nile to the Euphrates, a vision that many Israeli leaders shamelessly brandish in international fora, the occupation of Palestine must be understood as part of a broader project of domination. This is not merely about physical borders of historical Palestine. It is a systematic assertion of permanent supremacy that knows no border. One people controlling land, resources, and the very existence of another or others, often without needing full physical presence or formal annexation. Palestinians are brutalized, dispossessed, and yet they resist. The defiance is why they remain the thorn in the side, not only of an occupying power, but of a wider system where Israel acts together with and often as a proxy of the United States, destabilizing the region to weaken societies and making them easier to dominate. This project is already happening, and the wars and conflicts that have been brought by the United States, its Western allies, and some Arab allies against the peoples in the region speak to that. Palestine's struggle is the stubborn heartbeat of a region fighting for its soul, and the resistance that refuses to be tamed. Second, the Gaza genocide has turned Palestine as the epicenter of global reckoning, exposing how racial, colonial, capitalistic structures make war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide a profitable business. This resonates with the experience of colonized populations worldwide for centuries. For generations, Palestinians have been turned into a testing ground for weapons and surveillance techniques, providing boundless supply and demand, little oversight, and zero accountability. Too many influential corporate entities have profited freely. And this explains how, while Palestinians have been killed and maimed in the thousands every fortnight for the past 2 years, Tel Aviv Stock Exchange kept soaring, growing of 213% and amassing $226 billion in market gains only in the first 18 months of the genocide. And companies have turned over near record profits by equipping Israel with cutting-edge weaponry that has obliterated virtually the defenseless population in Gaza. Tech companies continue to provide dual-use infrastructure that enables mass targeting and mass killing. The machinery of global construction giants is razing Gaza to the ground. Major international banks have underwritten and purchased Israeli treasury bonds, financing the devastation, even as deficit grew and credit ratings fell. This is no ordinary occupation sustained by exploitation. This is a long-standing economy of occupation which has turned genocidal. And third, the meaning of what this genocide means for all of us, for our collective understanding of politics, of solidarity, of humanity. Today we know Gaza, we see Gaza. Hospitals bombed, parents gathering the limbs of their children, journalists and medics torn apart. This horror is visible to us in real time, on our phones, all day long, if we dare to look. But this is also bringing social and political awakening everywhere. It is shaping the conscience, especially of the new generations. Not long ago, my sister in arms from South Africa, Dr. Tlaleng Mofokeng, the United Nations Special Rapporteur, Ciao Tlaleng. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right to health told me, the wounds inflicted on the innocent ripple through every nation's soul. She was reflecting on the children from Gaza with me, but from her own experience of a child of apartheid South Africa. And this is true for every young soul beyond Gaza. For the youngest in this hyper-connected world, this genocide is not history, but memory in the making. Those in Europe will not have the distance that my generation had reading about the Holocaust and excuse of ignorance, as some did during the Rwanda genocide or the genocide in Bosnia. Or, as we in the West have done, cocooning ourselves into collective amnesia vis-à-vis our history of 500 years of colonial crimes. The Palestinian struggle has not only exposed the suffering of the Palestinians since the creation of the State of Israel and the complicity of our political systems. Today, the world knows the meaning of Nakba, as it has never done. and it will not forget it. And this is increasingly recognized as interconnected with injustices across the majority, the global majority, where economic structures of dispossession remain intact after colonial powers were expelled, and in the global minority as well, where those protesting genocide face fierce repression because the profiteers of the genocide, who are the same who keep seeding misery here in South Africa, as in Congo, as in Sudan, and increasingly across Europe and the United States as well, are those who want to keep operating without disruption. And perhaps this explains why, across Europe and beyond, people today marched with banners that read, "We wanted to save Palestine, but Palestine is saving us." Because we cannot bring the clock back. Palestine has awakened us. And now, with all this knowledge and awareness, the question is simple but urgent. What shall we do? And we seem suspended between the abyss and hope when the old world dying and the new struggling to breathe. I do not know how we will end this, but of something I'm sure: we will not come out of this genocide as we entered it. This is precisely where international law must act. Supporting Palestinian self-determination is not an act of charity. It is a binding obligation on all states. The International Court of Justice has affirmed that Israel's occupation is illegal, a violation amounting to racial segregation and apartheid that must end. Troops must be withdrawn, colonies dismantled, resources given back, and concrete reparations offered, and the right to return of the refugees must be realized. When South Africa brought the genocide in Gaza before the International Court of Justice, while much of the West looked away, or worse, defended and armed the assailant, you, South Africa, did more than just filing a case. You opened the door for other countries to act. Above all, this is the first settler colonial genocide ever brought before an international court, a moment of historic resonance, echoing not only through Palestine, but through every land where indigenous people have barely survived their own genocides. This act has rekindled faith in international law, so thank you, South Africa, as a symbolic restoration, a quiet revolution in the history of international law. And in doing so, you proved again who you are, heirs of Nelson Mandela, in this conviction that justice must be lived, not merely spoken. And in a few days, I will have the privilege to present my last report to the United Nations Assembly called Gaza Genocide, a Collective Crime. And I will do that from Cape Town. How symbolic. Well, the US has banned me, and with it, my analysis and recommendations, I'm in this country. The country that once again stands at the cusp of what can be the beginning of a new multilateralism, challenging once more colonial and imperial power structures. But you know, as history teaches us, law on paper is never enough. Law is only as strong as the will of states to enforce it, and enforcing it today requires principled choices and courage. And what if states fail to act? What if South Africa and others do not do what they are obliged to do? Impose an arms embargo and suspend trade, investigate and, where warranted, prosecute its nationals who have fought in the Israeli army, prevent businesses from operating in Israel, and stop pro-genocide forces in this country from dehumanizing Palestinians and harassing anyone who stands in solidarity with them. Facing Gaza's devastation, we are called to choose justice over silence, action over apathy. And each of us must also act, the hard part. Make ethical choices as consumers, teachers, students, civil servants, now more than ever called to be more civil than servants. Stop buying products that sustain the illegal occupation and genocide. Hold governments, banks, pension funds, and universities accountable. Boycott Israeli products and those linked to Israeli crimes, as the BDS movement asks us. We have to mobilize unions, coordinate with global solidarity movements, demand divestments from universities and institutions that are engaged with the Israeli occupation, apartheid, and genocide. And as Dr. Naledi Pandor once said, you said it, if the workers worldwide struck for a month, the genocidal assault on Gaza would stop immediately. It is not too late. It is not too late, and also go and visit Palestine. While Gaza is still under full blockade, so much can only be learned and understood of occupation by witnessing the daily struggles Palestinians face in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and in what remains of historical Palestine, as well as the beauty that permeates that land. And finally, we must demand the liberation of all Palestinian hostages, especially Marwan Barghouti. Marwan Barghouti, whose voice has been silenced for far too long. And in a world where powerful states and corporations seem to perpetuate and advance greed-driven interests at our expense, we who do not hold unlimited wealth, we who do not hold weapons or control algorithms, we can still find new ways forward. I think that South Africa's legacy shows us that no system of oppression can endure forever. And against all odds, the people united can truly challenge and change the course of history. And taking a step back through the century, humanity has always had to fiercely fight for the affirmation of human rights. From the slave trade to racial segregation, women's rights, indigenous people's rights, minority rights, the rights of persons with disabilities, and LGBTQI+, and so forth. Together, with the enduring battle against apartheid, colonialism, and illegal occupation, we must stand together. None of this struggle is a finished business. We do not have the luxury to give up. True change and transformation demand courage and yes, sacrifice. But it's through this sacrifice and it's through steadfastness that humanity is reminded of its shared responsibility and its capacity for renewal. These days, while visiting the archives of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, I held in my hands a poignant script in which Nelson Mandela wrote that across centuries, men and women have come and gone. Some have left absolutely not trace. Others are going to be remembered for the evil they caused, and others for what they tried to do in the name of justice. Today, these words echo from South Africa to Italy, from Palestine to Sudan, from Australia to the United States, the states built on lands taken through centuries of genocide. And each of us, we should ask ourselves, what do we want to leave on our passage on this earth that we do not receive from our parents, but we borrow from our children? Personally, I never imagined that my path would lead me to confront power in this way. I was born in a small mountain town in southern Italy, and a place that seems ordinary, yet whose lessons were extraordinary. My early years were shaped not by fame and privilege, but by an education that I believe sought to teach me history with honesty. I learned of the Holocaust as a benchmark of human depravity and of Italy's survival through 20 brutal years of dictatorship under Mussolini's fascism and his fascist brigades. A struggle whose sacrifices freed us from tyranny and gave us a constitution grounded in justice, equality, and human dignity. However, what my European education did not teach me was how the horrors of the Holocaust, built upon what Germany had done to the Herero and the Nama peoples in Namibia, they did not teach me how the dehumanization of the Jews is the same, how the dehumanization the Jews were subjected to is the same the colonized societies had to endure for decades, if not centuries. And indeed, as the Israeli historian Raz Segal says, the idea of a superior race was neither born nor died with the Nazi regime, and in fact, continues to fester in the world today. And only later in life did I come to understand that centuries of racism, suprematism, and patriarchy that had erased entire communities across Europe before and while expanding into the settler colonial enterprise that would scar millions across Africa, Latin America, and Asia. By exceptionalizing the Holocaust as the only aberration in our history, we, the Europeans, have concealed the many other crimes and injustices that our ancestors committed, and in doing so, undermined our own capacity to see the structural and eruptive forms of violence that permeate our society and the international community up until today, a process which finds in the ongoing endorsement in Gaza by too many Western states its monstrous culmination. And in this moment in history, my commitment to justice also includes undoing such legacy by carrying forward the voices of my nation's humanist legal tradition into this global chorus for justice. Thinking of Mandela, I can't avoid mentioning my fellow national Antonio Gramsci, a politician and philosopher who was arrested by the fascist regime in 1926, leading to his death a decade later. He said, "Indifference is the dead weight of history," which I find echoed in Archbishop Desmond Tutu's words. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Such historical figures left in the world the sparkles of light and justice, embodied a commitment to justice and humanity that shall inspire us as we move forward. Freedom, justice, and human dignity can never be taken for granted. They must be defended every day, otherwise they risk to quietly disappear. And as I reflect on my ordinary story besides your extraordinary one, I try to fully grasp the depth of Ubuntu. I am because you are. This reaches me as a truth forged in pain and resilience.
Can I confess something, Lama?
I'm all ears.
Since you recommended Monday.com's AI blocks, work got so much easier.
Of your own Ubuntu. In Arabic, sumud means steadfastness, resilience that becomes a way of being. It is the grandmother in Gaza who gathers her orphaned grandchildren amid rubble and whispers. Remember. It is the farmer in the West Bank who replants his olive sapling each time settlers uproot the old tree, refusing to give up his bond to the soil. It is the children in Gaza studying in tents after their schools have been destroyed. Sumud is resilient with grace, defiance with dignity, the quiet, unyielding courage to keep living, hoping, and loving amid the hardest adversity. Sumud, like Ubuntu, is not merely a word. It is the moral DNA of survival, a profound expression of faith in our shared interdependence, a powerful antidote to the isolation and fear that conflictuality sows at every level and in every domain. Together, they define an ethics of coexistence and perhaps what Nelson Mandela envisioned, a world in which empathy becomes the language of politics, and politics is rooted in justice as the recognition of our shared humanity. They remind us that no one is truly free until we are all free, and that our dignity is inseparable from the dignity of others, and both teach us that we are bound together in each other's suffering and hope. And as I move to the conclusion, if there is one thing that I would like you to take from this lecture is this: whether recognized or not by those in power, the Palestinian struggle for freedom stands at the heart of the movement toward a truly decolonized world order. In other words, a world in which international law is applied universally and the crimes of colonialism for which Mandela and his comrades spent 27 years in prison, as hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have in theirs, are finally accounted for. Otherwise, it will be remembered as the greatest moral failure of our time. And that is why, no matter the repression we face, Palestine will increasingly stand at the center of all struggle for justice worldwide. Therefore, as we reflect on peace and cooperation, let's appreciate these. Opposing the bombing or so-called ceasefire is not peace. In this atrocity that some has the audacity to call peace, the Israeli army maintains controls over more than half of Gaza, continuing to kill everywhere, and everywhere it can, and rapaciously steal land and resources across the West Bank, continuing to hold and torment thousands of Palestinian hostages. The self-determination of the Palestinian people appears still as far as it has ever been. And this is why the pressure must continue if the Palestinians are to achieve the same justice that everyone deserves. Millions of ordinary people are crying out for moral clarity and principled leadership, for end of complicity in my beautiful country and in yours, South Africa. They long for a vision that places human life above conquest, dignity above convenience, community above self-interest. They demand an international order rooted in our shared humanity. And this is the new multilateralism that we must build, not one for the few, but one for the many, where solidarity, as the political declination of love, can be fully realized in each and every society. And in this, your leadership lights a path for others to follow. South Africa can and must continue to stand at the forefront, must continue to open doors and compelling others to follow. Many today feel hesitant of standing up to power. And I understand. Fear is human. But as someone who comes from a place that has been plagued by the mafia, where the logic of intimidation could smear, torment, and even kill those who stand for justice, I tell you from my heart, it's not the blow that defeats us. It's refusing to pick ourselves back up. The only true defeat is when we left fear and intimidation silence us. And fear cannot withstand the power of people united in a just cause. It can be defeated by the unity of ordinary people and the unity of struggles across the world. And today, in many ways, I stand before you in a place of vulnerability, but also of great strength, empowered by the resilience of the Palestinian people and everyone standing with them. And by doing the right thing, we find allies, and through solidarity, we find strength. But yes, we have a long way to go, and we have begun. And in this beginning, I find hope. I believe we can lay the foundation not only for a more just global order, but for a new way of being as a global community, the realization of the principles of Ubuntu and Sumud, a world that finally embraces humanity, solidarity, justice, and equality for all. Alone, we are frail, we are fragile, like butterfly wings. But when we flap those little wings all together, we can make a storm. And may justice be our storm. And before I leave you, let me use your soil to send a message to the Palestinian people. Whatever happens, Palestine will have written this tumultuous chapter of history, not as a footnote in the chronicles of the would-be conquerors, but as the newest verse in a centuries-long saga of people who have raised against injustice, against colonialism, and today, more than ever, against liberal tyrannies. Thank you, and così sia bonga, and grazie. Shukran.
I think the people have thanked you. Let's get straight to the discussion. Thank you. May I ask you to just make sure that your microphone is on? I just want to be sure that those are on. Yes? Great. I'm just going to give you a moment to pause after your speech. I'll start with Dr. Pandor, who, as all of you know, was the Minister for International Relations in South Africa when South Africa took its case to the ICJ. So there have been many detractors who've said South Africa must just withdraw that case or South Africa will be punished. In fact, the ambassador designate for the United States, who was interviewed in the House yesterday or 2 days ago, also said that this would be a priority for him to get South Africa to drop its case. Here's the reality. The case is a trial. It can't be dropped. There are about 14 other nations who have joined, and others have expressed an intention to join. But other detractors have said, you've got enough problems in South Africa. Why go here? Fix your own problems in South Africa. Why did South Africa go there? And related to this question is, what have been the ramifications in words and praxis? What has happened since then?
Well, happily, I'm no longer a member of government, so you could invite them at some point to talk on these matters. With respect to the nominee for ambassadorship to our country, I hope the government will use its accreditation power properly. With respect to why we went to the ICJ, our country believes very firmly that international law is important. We've also identified with the struggle for self-determination of the people of Palestine. This is a long-standing position of our government and of the party that is still the largest party in the country, the African National Congress. So people of Palestine supported us in our own struggle for freedom. As they struggle for freedom today, we cannot desert them. Third point, South Africa has rooted human rights and international solidarity in its constitution, particularly in its Bill of Rights and in the chapter dealing with international relations. Thus, it is important in executing practical action that gives concrete meaning to those particular clauses, that when there is harm being done to any person in the world, we should be ready to stand up. The war on the people of Palestine has been one of the most egregious acts of the past decade. There have been many Nakbas, many actions against Palestinian people. But the genocide we've seen since October 2023 is worse than any other conflict that we've seen in recent years. And we felt that government and the people of South Africa could not be silent in the face of such an onslaught.
Ms. Albanese, you said that no system of oppression can endure forever. Looking beyond the devastation that we are seeing every single day, politically, legally, and morally, what must happen for Gaza to begin a process of true self-determination, not a ceasefire that gets signed today and we wake up tomorrow to more bombs and more destruction? What needs to happen politically, legally, and morally for Gaza to begin this process of recovery and self-determination? And I guess where I'm going with this is that how can we move so that the international community can go beyond just managing this crisis, but rather end the occupation that fuels this crisis?
Well, I think that the answer is in your question, Because, you know, I'm puzzled by how in this horrible moment, member states seem lost, looking for solutions. But the solution is already there. It's in the simple and honest application of international aid, nothing, and not just in Gaza, in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. So the answer to your question is the occupation must end. And this is why, together with other independent experts of the United Nations and with the human rights community around, and this is why, Together with other independent experts of the United Nations and with the human rights community around the world, we have been not only very skeptical, but concerned and in shock at seeing so many countries applauding that disgrace that they call the peace deal. This is not peace deal, this is not peace. This is whatever under duress, and it's unacceptable. So what is to be done is to ensure that Israel withdraws its troops, dismantle the colonies without building new ones, stop telling the Palestinians what to do, start investigating and prosecuting the architect and the executioners of the genocide. Otherwise, other international courts and other domestic courts will do this, and it has started, and then offer reparations to the Palestinians for 57 years of occupation and the genocide. This is what is to happen.
We're going to talk about international law and a new multilateralism, as you said in your speech. But I want to talk about the word genocide, and I go there reluctantly because often this debate around genocide comes in bad faith, where we can be bogged down in this debate for political point scoring while people are dying in Gaza. However, defining this crisis as a genocide does unlock some legal and moral tools and obligations as well on the international community. We know that the Human Rights Commission of Inquiry and participating in that is another luminary of South Africa, Judge Navi Pillay. They released a report not so long ago, and that report, never mind the ICJ or the ICC, that report holds that Israel has committed 4 out of the 5 categories of acts that constitute the crime of genocide under the 1948 convention that covers it. It's in the report. But let's indulge those who want to debate the word, is it genocide, is it not genocide? What do you say?
Well, I think firstly, we should tell them that when we submitted to the International Court of Justice, our submission was acting on the basis of international law, specifically the Convention on Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. There is a convention, and Israel, interestingly, is one of the first signatories of that convention. And only states that are signatories to that convention can take another state to the court. This is what we did as a signatory. We took a member state of the Convention on Genocide to the International Court of Justice. How was it possible for us to do so? In the convention, they define what genocide is. And in our assessment of all available evidence, we alleged that genocide was underway. There was denial of food for living, denial of water for sustenance. There was murder intended and was indeed underway.
I think it's also important when talking about the convention that there is a crucial word. It's also about prevention. It's not just the punishment. So even if you're sitting there saying there's no genocide, the convention enjoins us to prevent it from happening. I want to move to your report that you launched recently, and you mentioned some elements of it there. It's titled From Economy of Occupation to Economy of Genocide. Now, this report, and I would urge you to read it, it identifies dozens of corporations across defense, technology, tourism. I wouldn't have thought that. Tourism, the extractive industry, pension funds, you name it. These are corporations that are fueling and benefiting from this crisis. I mention this because often when there is a crisis of this scale, many ordinary citizens think there is nothing that I can do. I'm not in government, I'm not in the UN, I'm not a policy maker. But you are a consumer. And I was aghast that some of my decisions as a consumer are problematic in the context of your report. Tell us about your most seminal findings in this report and what do you want us to do with it?
Yeah. If you allow me to say something on genocide, just to add two elements. You rightly pointed to the word prevention. The convention is to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. And how do you punish it how do you prevent it if you cannot even see it, if you cannot even name it? And the obligation of states clearly were triggered by the ICJ sets of provisional measures that were issued upon request of South Africa. Because look, had the Court of Justice found no merit, no veridicity in what South Africa had submitted, they would have dismissed the case. Instead, ordered provisional measures that, had they been observed and respected, probably the genocide would have stopped. And indeed, 18 months later, the genocide is ongoing. But there is another element. The genocide, because people say, yeah, but it's just war crimes and crimes against humanity. Excuse me? It's very serious. If we recognize that there are war crimes and crimes against humanity ongoing, why are member states not stopping it? Why are they still trading with Israel? Why are they still providing weapons or buying weapons that have been tested on the Palestinians? And here is the answer. Here is the answer to the question regarding my other report, the one that I submitted in July, that is to be read in conjunction with the last report, which talks about the complicity of states, because states have continued to trade weapons, continue to buy surveillance tools that once again have been experimented, tested on the body and soul of the Palestinian people. But a genocide targets a group as such. And it's in this as such that we cannot miss what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, because they can keep on stopping bombing the land, but this idea of destroying the people as such is continued to the intent to ethnically cleanse the land that has been enunciated, invoked, celebrated throughout two years of genocide. And it's not just because of ideology, it's not just because of the rage of Israel that this genocide has not been stopped. It's because the genocide has proven profitable for far too many. And because, look, I could have written the report on the economy of occupation turning into an economy of genocide the economy of the occupation, years ago, because Israel has used the private sector, like the weapons and heavy machinery, surveillance systems, but also the production of goods and services, the tourism industry, to displace the Palestinians and replace them with settlers. This is what's going on, and this is what continues to go on, and this is what we risk to see happening to the Palestinians, where what is proposed today as reconstruction of Gaza might achieve what the genocide has failed to achieve. Kick out the Palestinians from the little that remain of their land. And this is why we need to stop it, and we cannot call it peace. But is this new? Is this exceptional? Is this only happening to Palestine? No. This is what has happened throughout history. And this is why I say in the report, and of course it will resonate with you in South Africa, but also in DRC, in Sudan, throughout this continent, settler colonialism is not... Settler colonialism has always involved private interests. Private companies have always, historically, been the drivers and the enablers of settler colonial enterprises. And while colonial powers might have left, they don't have any longer boots on the ground here. The exploitation, the structure, the deep entrenched structure of exploitation continues through the businesses, through the multinationals. And this is what we have to stand against today. For Palestine, inside our own system, in Europe, and here in South Africa.
I want to ask, before we go into multilateralism, I do want you to share the South African perspective on this, the need to build ethical business practices. We know the history of South Africa, the riches built on the back of black laborers, the mining industry. It is not just in South Africa, in Zambia as well. It is happening. You mentioned the DRC and the UAE in Sudan, owning the country's the country's wealth that comes also with environmental degradation, displacement, you name it. What can you share with the world about South Africa's experience here and the need to imagine and create new economic pathways that do not repeat historical injustices?
Well, on economic transformation and broad benefit, we have failed dismally as South Africa.
You heard that, right?
So this is a reality which is very painful, but I think that part of the reason lies in the fact that those who own the means of wealth were and are not ready to share it with those who were dispossessed. And this is a problem. Often when we express displeasure at this lack of progress, we express the displeasure toward the government and not toward the rapacious private sector. We need to turn closer attention to the private sector and the lack of responsiveness to the demands for economic transformation. This is something we're not doing, and I think much more attention should be given to it. So out of the South African experience, I think those who will become free, because I believe Palestinians will achieve freedom, those who will become free must learn from our experiences and the errors that we committed on achieving freedom, and identify the gaps and ensure that they address them and don't allow themselves to become the tool of the wealthy. Develop a system where there's greater sharing of economic opportunity.
Okay, let's get to the theme then of the international system of multilateralism and international law altogether. International law, I'll start with you, Ms. Albanese. International laws were designed to prevent these mass atrocities, these genocides, economic oppression. But we're living in a world where we have seen that international law has become optional. The powerful and those who wrote some of the rules can decide whether to adhere to them or not. Some benefit from oppressing those who don't have the same economic and military might. You have called Gaza the shame of our time. And there is another quote that is attributed to you. If you didn't say it, I apologize in advance, that Gaza is a graveside for international law. Is international law dead?
I don't think I said that.
Okay.
I think it's the Secretary General of the United Nations, and with all due respect, I beg to disagree as of yet. Because, first of all, I think that the post-World War II multilateral order was somewhat the birthchild of grief and regret. International law was already functioning, and it has evolved at that turning point in history. But let's be honest, it's not that the multilateral system that was created 80 years ago was exactly complying with it and delivering on its promises, because that order was consisting of about 50 states, while two-thirds of those who constitute the General Assembly today were still under colonial yoke. So what I think is that justice is an unfinished business. Justice is a promise that is to be delivered daily. And if I take a step back, and if for a moment I manage to not to think of the genocide, I think that we are doing slightly better, because today, as I was saying before in my lecture, we have the perception that this must be has already perished in Gaza. As this is where the United Nations has failed terribly, miserably in Gaza, politically, diplomatically, and from a humanitarian point of view. But never before I've heard so many demanding justice. And look, the revolution, though quiet, has already started, because as we speak, students are forcing their universities to divest from Israel. Pension funds around the world are divesting from Israel. And lawyers, God bless the lawyers, lawyers worldwide are bringing their governments, corporations, and even Israeli soldiers, nationals or not, before courts. So this is we need to win this. We need to keep on pressing, keep on pressuring, because as I said, we will never get out of this genocide with the same pretense of innocence that we had when we entered it. And we have the opportunity to make it better. So let's hope to deliver to the promise of equality and universality of human rights and dignity that was, in fact, put on paper in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at the end of the Second World War.
Okay. Dr. Pando, I want your thoughts here as well on international law, especially as one sees the cynicism that sets in, the impatience because of this horror, the wheels of justice just moving slowly and slowly, and those who ought to be held accountable not being held accountable. Does international law still matter?
Absolutely. I believe it's extremely important. I know it sounds very revolutionary to say that international law should be kicked out of the window. But for the poor, the vulnerable, and the victim, international law is important. And let us not fail to acknowledge that the protections of the treaties and conventions drafted post-Second World War have helped us to avoid a world war for 80 years. So let's not be too quick to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I do believe there is urgent need for reform of the United Nations, particularly the Security Council. Its original conception was flawed at inception, and it is now a deadly instrument. And it needs to be reformed in order to be responsive to the crises of the world. So for me, international law is important, particularly because of those who are innocent, vulnerable, and marginalized, who are most often the victims. but we need stronger instruments, stronger institutions in order to ensure that when protection is needed, enforcement is available to ensure protection.
If you don't mind me staying with you on this matter of the United Nations and reform of the Security Council, multilateralism was meant to level the playing fields, yet we see, whether we're talking global trade and technology regimes, those have deepened inequality. The reform of the UN Security continues to be elusive. The Bretton Woods institutions are criticized for not being fit for purpose, especially for poorer nations. The debt that hangs like an albatross around Africa's neck, and the criticism that multilateral institutions continue to reflect the same power structures of the 1940s. The reason I'm staying with you on this is that I remember during the presidency of Thabo Mbeki, together with his Nigerian counterpart, Olusegun Obasanjo, in the time of the late Kofi Annan, it looked as if Africa was close to some sort of meaningful reform of the UN Security Council, of the United Nations itself. But we seem to have regressed, and there are no loud voices calling for this in a meaningful way. Where are we, and what does this reform look like practically?
Well, we have put forward an African position on this question, a Zulini consensus as you know it. I do think even that consensus requires a rethinking. We do have a range of proposals on reform of the United Nations. And I think, as I said, in particular, the Security Council, but also the decision-making role and impact of the General Assembly. So there's much to be done. But I fully agree with you that some of the practice of international law and its standing in the globe has been harmed by double standards of the most powerful countries in the world, who respect international law when it suits their agenda and do not respect it when their agenda is not advanced. So they will support the prosecutor of the ICC if he's acting against Rwandese who committed war crimes. But when it is against the Prime Minister of Israel and his ministers, they will not support the prosecutor. This is double standard. And what we need is an equitable approach to all international law. Every perpetrator, wherever they may be, they must face the might of international law, no matter who they are. So our world needs to change. And we do have, I think, a problem of the implementation of international law through the vision of a double standard rather than a world in which all humanity should enjoy protection.
So we are creatures of hope. We must have hope even at these times. Ms. Albanese, you've been...
I think for me, yes, hope is necessary, but more than hope, we must have activism. We are too complacent. We don't have a clear, focused set of campaigns. We know, for example, that there are certain companies in South Africa that are providing particular goods to Israel, and constantly we turn to the wrong entity. We should focus on those companies. We should be active against those companies. So I think, in addition to hope, activism is crucial.
So Glencore is mentioned in your report. It's in the report. I didn't write it. I guess where I was going with the hope question was that you were unequivocal with the United Nations and where it has failed. Observing the votes at the UNGA, a couple of years ago, you wouldn't get even the US's traditional allies, Israel's traditional allies, that the UK and France are voting against on any matter related to Israel. In June 2025, the UNGA adopted a resolution demanding an immediate and unconditional and permanent ceasefire. 149 countries for, 12 against. September 2025, just last month, the UNGA endorsed the New York Declaration. Again, it outlines tangible steps towards a two-state solution. 142 in favor, 10 abstained, 10 voted against. Those are the numbers. But here, even at the UNGA, can we see the isolation of the US or Israel? Is that beginning to emerge, where the voting patterns are not reflecting what they historically used to reflect? Can we work with that? Can we start something with that?
Look, first of all, had you asked me the question about hope, my answer would have been the same. Hope is a discipline. It doesn't mean sitting, waiting for the train to arrive. It's about being the train. So the other thing is that I would like to be clear and not to be misunderstood. When I criticize nations, I criticize member states, because the United Nations is it's the sum of all our countries. It consists of 193 member states. Yes, it's a forum to take discussions, to negotiate, to see how to prevent conflicts, and if conflicts arise, how to resolve conflicts. And it's not happening anymore. And whose fault is this? Member states themselves. So it's true what you say, that before there was a more honest, let's say, and principled voting pattern. Now, even African states who have naturally been close to the quest for liberation of Palestine and the struggle for self-determination of the Palestinian people, you start seeing them voting against or abstaining. And I think it's because before there was this tendency, let's cast the vote. This is as good as we can be. In any case, we are going to violate these resolutions, right? The moment the global community started to seek accountability, protesting against their governments, then things started to change. And so powerful states are drifting away. They don't need the United Nations anymore. This is why I was saying before, I don't think that Gaza but it's surely the graveyard of what the United Nations was supposed to do from a diplomatic, political, and economic point of view. But there is still a possibility to succeed. And in this case, I've been wondering now for months. Excuse me, in the United Nations there are 193 members. If 191 member states who have nothing to do, who shouldn't have anything to do with this business of genocide, unlawful occupation, and apartheid, where Israel is not alone, is Israel and the United States has always been like that, can they detach themselves from this union? Well, the fact is that it's not happening, and the answer tells us where the problem lies, is that member states, governments are not free. Yeah. There is still the influence of multinationals and private interests that controls governments. And it's a conflict of interest whose weight is eventually sustained, whose price is eventually paid by us, all of us, in the global majority, us in the global minority. And this is why when I say Palestine is a revealer today of who we are, both in terms of misery, but in terms of opportunities, this is what the influential, the very powerful member states that want to continue, or the powers that want to continue to keep this unequal multilateral order, start freaking out. And in fact, this is why I believe I've been sanctioned by the United States.
I've got two more questions and then final comments from you. I do want to talk about this theme, and I'm sure the Nelson Mandela Foundation is finding this out in real time as we sit here. That intersection of technology, power, and information warfare. Just allow me to give a few case studies. After the UN General Assembly, a lot of presidents were involved in some bilateral relations and meeting businesses, private sector, but Mr. Netanyahu openly described social media as a weapon. He met with some influencers while other presidents were doing what I just described. He openly described social media as a weapon and pointed to texts as, I quote, the most important purchase going on right now. He said we need to own these platforms. Elon Musk owns X on that platform. We see the algorithm has changed. There's very little fact-checking, and hate and outrage are rewarded. Planted technologies, you know about it, similar. It provides powerful data tools to state and corporation, tools for surveillance, profiling, and narrative influence. This is important. This is important because the social media space, the information space, has also become a tool of foreign policy. I wonder what your thoughts are on that, and then I'll come to you, Dr. Pando. In the context of Palestine, I should have added that. But.
Yeah, it's about Palestine, but Palestine is what has allowed us, or what is allowing us to connect the dots. And awareness, knowledge is power. If people understand what's happening, it's the end of the Truman Show. And this is why, we see today what has been ongoing, at least successfully for 30 years. Because until the 90s, Palestine and South Africa in particular would appear in, not just in the UN literature, but also in the public discourse, including in the global minority, as two cases connected of unfinished colonialism. And then, as of the 90s, at least for what concerns Palestine, the discourse has changed. And this is where the war of narratives has become one of the extreme. And Israel has understood that in order to maintain hegemony, had to control the narrative, cultural hegemony. And this is why so much effort is put today on controlling the algorithms, because the control of the media, the traditional media, or the control exerted over universities doesn't suffice anymore. So we are still there, where the production of knowledge is a carrier and is a tool of epistemic violence, because the Palestinians, I keep on saying, having been one of the observers of what has happened to them, the Palestinians have been brutalized, not just through the violence of the oppression on the ground, but also because they have been killed, they have been smeared, they have been blamed, and they have been smeared, accused through the false portrayal of them as being the cause of the problem. And this has happened because of the control of the narrative. And today, of course, we need to keep on maintaining that narrative. We need to keep on using that epistemic violence. And because there is a critical moment of where social media have been a vehicle of conscientization, now even that is to be acquired and seized.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Pando, you can speak to any of these themes, but I do want to ask you about the Arab nations themselves. In this crisis, we hear the word normalizing of relations between the Saudis and Israel. Donald Trump was in Riyadh and he was warmly received. Qatar has offered him a jet. We know that Israel attacked the leadership of Hamas on Qatar soil, but America was asked to be a mediator of some sort and asked Netanyahu to apologize. So there are these relationships that are emerging between the United States and some of these nations. What does that mean? Is the Arab nations using their economic leverage and their new proximity, if I may call it that, to help solve this crisis?
No, they're not. I mean, they could have done so much to help the Palestinian people to achieve freedom. And instead of striving for freedom and justice, they've just made friends with the most criminal elements in the world. And it's a sad, sad day. I think that we need as I said earlier, to be more organized. I think we need to, you asked earlier, what needs to be done. I think the Palestinian people need to form a very strong political force, like the liberation movements we had here in South Africa. They need to ensure that they link in with the international solidarity movement, which is us as part of it, and the rest of the world as part of a global international solidarity movement. We must use our strength here and all over with that movement to push for the freedom of Palestinians. Without that, their neighbors are not going to help them. It's us in the global solidarity movement who will make the difference. And I think, for me, it's really tragic. Having been a refugee in Lesotho and Botswana, I'm astounded that those countries, small as they were then, gave us refuge and support, not entirely, but very strong and clear support for the liberation movements. And Palestine, with very wealthy, powerful economies as their neighbors, are not getting what we got. It's tragic.
Final thoughts from you, Ms. Albanese.
Oof. Look, I think that is not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy because we live in a world where injustice has become widespread more than we realize. And when I say injustice, I don't just talk of economic injustice or access to justice. No, I think that injustice has somewhat been planted and it has rooted in our hearts. As I was listening to this last comment, Dr. Pandor, as you were a refugee in neighboring countries, I think of how unfair is that now there are migrants from these countries, from the neighboring countries in South Africa, and they experience a different fate. And this is the thing, I mean, but I'm not judging this country. I just see that this is what we do to anyone who's on the move. Like really the borders were what make a distinction between humanity and barbarism. The Mediterranean area has become, the Mediterranean Sea has become a cemetery, the contrary of what it has always been portrayed to be, a place of love, a place of union. And I think that it's in the way we treat each other, we see each other, that is the problem. As Edward Said, the great Palestinian intellectual, used to say, I do believe that humanism, seeing each other as human regardless of the color of the skin, of our religion, of our gender, we need to see each other as brothers and sisters and members of the same family, because we are part of the same human family, and through these also start respecting all other creators and Mother Earth, which, as I said before, is not something that we have inherited, it's something that we are borrowing from our children. Thank you so much.
That brings us to the end of our conversation. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much. But I will call Dr. Buthelezi to give a vote of thanks, and we're going to have a uniquely South African sound in just a few minutes. I'd like you to stick around for that. Dr. Buthelezi.
I hope you have been challenged, moved, and provoked as much as I have been by this lecture. Please join me again in thanking Ms. Francesca Albanese, Dr. Naledi Lindo, and of course, our inimitable Ridi Klabi. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Allow me just 2 more minutes to thank some of the people who have made today possible, made the last week possible. Thank you to the United Nations Country Office, the University of the Witwatersrand, Vision Tactical, B&B Media, Gift of the Givers, various members of the Muslim community, Vodacom, South Africa, Mahindra, Southern Sun, our media partners, SAFM and the Mail and Guardian, and lastly, the following organizations that have partnered with us on various roundtables: the Jewish Democratic Initiative, South African Jews for a Free Palestine, the South African Council of Churches, the Evangelical Alliance of South Africa, Salam Media, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Boycott, Divest and Sanctions, BDS, South Africa, and allow me finally to thank the trustees of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, as well as the staff and volunteers who have made this all happen. And finally, the South African sound that Redi talked about. Let me invite back on stage Ami Faku. Thank you very much for being here, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon.
Setting up, do you want me to sing or you're fine with the silence? Thank you.
May I please have this dance? So, may I please have this dance? This is where opportunity meets chance, where purpose meets a plan. May I please have this May I please have this dance?